Hey everybody, Braden here, and welcome back to another tournament game. This is the second game being back in tournament play for 2022. It's nice to be back into tournament chess. I have a lot of videos to record, by the way. This was recorded in mid-October. This game was played, I think, in something like March or April, and I've played the tournament nearly every single month since then. So I have, I believe, like 50 or 60 games to still go over and record. So it's gonna be a lot. But anyways, let's jump into this game. I'm playing against Nikolai, who has a lower CFC national rating of like 1752 or 1750 or something, which is about the same as mine. But as you can see, they have a FIDE rating, and it's like 2000. So I'm a little in trouble here, right? Either like, because I'm going for National Master. My FIDE rating, yeah, sure. Everyone cares about their FIDE rating, let's be honest. But right now, my priority is my national rating, and I'm playing against someone who's over 2000 FIDE, but their national's the same as mine. This feels like unfair, right? But let's get into the game and see how it goes. We see e4 and g6, which was already kind of a surprise, but also not. First we saw b3 from our opponent first game, now g6. We're seeing a lot of hyper-modern stuff going on here. I played d4, bishop g7, and I just go for c4. I realized, like, oh, I played King's Indian for a while. How about I play King's Indian as white, because I know how annoying it is as black, and let's just hope we get into it. If not, and they play the move that they played in the game, c5, then we can get into some Maroczy bind positions, and I'm quite content there as well. I could play d5 and maybe enter some e6 stuff, or maybe they give queen a5 check, or something like this, like here d6, knight c3. I've seen things like this before too, with like queen a5. I don't want to enter that. No. I just play knight f3, develop a piece, offer a Maroczy bind dragon position. And that's exactly what happens. Knight takes d4, or pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, d6, knight to c3, knight c6, bishop e3, knight f6, bishop to e2 here, castles, queen to e2, and I'm just saying, like, hey, if you want to play knight g4, yeah, sure, whatever. Maybe this isn't the most accurate, but this is just what I've done in the past, and maybe it just equalizes, or maybe black is even slightly better. It's really hard for me to tell. Generally, I'm still just happy playing them because we have a big space advantage there. My opponent played rook e8. I played rook c1, offering knight g4 one last time. They didn't do it, and now I'm just saying, okay, fine, if you don't want to get a knight for a bishop there, then I guess I'll have to stop you eventually, right? So I played f3. Now we see bishop d7 and a4, which is aimed to prevent any sort of future b5. One thing is, if I play b3 here, which is another idea to eventually go a4, they might try to go for some b5 like this, even like queen b8, b5. You never know. I just went for a4 first. I'm sure b3 is fine though. We see rook c8, b3, and knight to a5. And I remember actually looking at, I believe it was a Shankland course here around this point. And I know that rook a b1 is gonna be like the engine move in these types of positions, but I kind of wanted to go for something a little different. I wanted to go bishop d1, b4, not immediately because obviously c4 would hang, and then or bishop d1, c2, b1, a2, and then b4, and try to target the f7 pawn since the rook's on e8 now. That's actually what I try to do in the game. Bishop d1. Now we see knight c6, just going back, castles, knight e5, and bishop c2. And now I'm on my maneuver, because the bishop on e2, I'm not sure exactly where it wanted to be. My impression was that being on a2 is actually better than on e2. Is that the clear answer? I don't actually think it is. I think it was an interesting try, though, and I'm happy I did it in the game. And it ended up working out in my favor, as we'll eventually see here, but I don't think it was 100% correct. Instead, again, going for moves like rook b1, maintaining your space, eventually going for a knight d5. That's generally the correct plan here. But okay, my opponent played bishop c6. And again, one thing to point out here is a lot of people would want to take on c6, especially knowing it's a Sicilian. And when it's a Sicilian, you want to take a bishop for a knight if you can. The truth is, this is no ordinary Sicilian. It's a Maroczy Sicilian, or a Dragon Sicilian. I'd say the Maroczy part is more important here, where the space disadvantage that black has currently, black does have a space disadvantage. If you just like flip the board here, sorry, that might be really awkward and really weird. What does black do in this position? It might be hard to find a move. Well, maybe it won't be hard to specifically find a move per se, but the biggest difficulty they have is trying to find an active one. And what they want to do is they want to go for b5 or d5. And if you take on c6, then you're weakening the b5 square under your control here. So that's why. Sorry again for flipping it if that spooked ya. The knight is equally as good as the bishop in the sense that they both cover b5, but we have a space advantage. And if we start trading off all the minor pieces, just imagine they were all off the board here. Black space isn't as big of a deal, despite being a little bit more cramped. They can bring a piece to c5. They can play a5 if they want to. There's no weaknesses. I can't, for the life of me, see why they'd be much worse. So that's just something to point out. That's why you don't really take on c6. That's just kind of like an open-ended, very long and tedious way to explain it. Sorry about that. So I played rook fd1. We see h5, and I played h4. I don't know if h4, in hindsight, was the best move. The reason why I played h4 over h3 is because I was worried of a potential h4 like this. We'll actually see this in a future game. That's kind of like a cute little foreshadow here. But luckily here, this knight h5 stuff just doesn't come in time. For example, here, bishop g5. There's no knight h5. We can just take the pawn, which we're extremely happy about. So h4 doesn't quite work at all. So that's just something to point out here. h3 is definitely still fully possible, and might just be preferred over h4 instead. But okay, I played h4 because maybe I'm going to use the g5 square for my bishop. That was my idea in the game. They played king h7. Now that prevents bishop h6, which is generally a good thing, actually. Trading off these two pieces, I think favors white when you're trying to go for a kingside attack. And I have a lot of space. My bishop on c2 was aimed near the king, and I think it is actually fair to assume that a potential kingside attack could have been in the air. I played bishop b1, and we can still see my idea. I'm trying to go to a2 here, and once I go to a2, b4, b5 could come, and f7 is a weakness. So, funnily enough, this whole idea of bishop e2 to d1 to c2 to b1 to a2, I'll put it on the board because I think it's funny. Here. I surprisingly haven't been able to find any like refutation to it, which has been nice. So it feels good to make weird maneuvers, you know. Whenever you get to show them in games, it's an exciting thing. But unfortunately, sometimes when you make exciting maneuvers, a lot of the times you're just wasting time. So I had to make sure that wasn't the case here. Luckily, in these Maroczy positions, things are really tied up and it's hard to move. So making slow maneuvers like that is not the end of the world. So my opponent played bishop d7. I played knight d to e2. One of the biggest ideas behind this was actually to go knight f4 and bring one of the knights to d5 here to trade off just one pair of knights, open the c file, and just say, okay, we'll start trading a little bit, but hopefully when we end up start trading that will actually be better for me there, because I'll just have control over the only open file. But okay, my opponent played bishop to e6. I played knight f4 because I was thinking, yay, I get it with tempo, and are they going to take? That looks wrong. Or do they move back and then just allow knight d5 anyways? But my opponent actually took. And I don't think this works out. There was a reason that they played it. I think they missed my response, though. So let's see what the response was. B takes c4, knight takes c4, queen e2, knight takes e3, queen takes e3. I'm up 1 point of material, 2 pawns for a piece. So I think the most important thing here is going for activity here. So if I can't get activity, then arguably, yeah, they have something. They played bishop h6, thinking they had e5, and there's no way to get around it. But the truth is, I play e5 first, and when I play e5, this is pretty bad. My opponent played knight d7. I played e6 here, and then we saw queen to b6 offering a queen trade. I thought this was a very, very excellent move, because of course their knight's just on pre, and it allows a rook fork, but obviously my queen's attacked, so I can't do that. I end up trading. I didn't really see anything else that was good here. I mean, maybe king f2 is a little interesting, but I really don't think anything's better than just taking on b6 here. So now it's kind of the moment of truth. I wasn't sure what to do because my f4 knight's hanging and my e6 pawn is hanging if my knight moves. And also if my knight moves, I do lose the exchange on c1. I am up a piece though, which is nice, but I wasn't sure exactly how to continue the game. I think the best way was to just take on f7 though. And taking on f7 is a huge deal here. For example, if they go rook f8, we can take on g6 because we actually have discovery threats, which is awesome. So let's just say rook f8. Knight g6 probably just wins the game here. Take on f8 with check, and then take here. We are up a piece, and more than that, even after a move like bishop e1, or even like rook c2, a funny move to try to get out of the pin by defending our rook. So they can't take on a4 anymore. King takes. We can play something like a5, and then like knight d5, followed by bishop a2. Very strange stuff, but this is kind of like what you can do if you take on f7. Instead, I play g3. So I give a third pawn, which arguably is very controversial here, because 3 pawns for piece is technically equal material. I like to say technically because generally sometimes you get 3 pawns for piece and it's just not even close to enough material. Like the compensation is just not there. But here, I think they get a little something for it. But I think I still have it in the bag, luckily. So they take on f4, and f takes e4. I play rook e1 to attack the e pawn here, and they go rook c7. And yeah, after a5, I'm pretty happy to see rook c7. They go knight d7, I go knight e4, and obviously if they take, I'll happily just take back. In fact, I can actually just go, sorry, they played rook c6. I can go check here as well, king g7, and then go here. I think ultimately I would just leave the knight on e4 though for flexibility. It's just something to consider though. But my opponent played rook c6, and now I think it goes from just like I'm pushing to this is just completely winning now. And I have an interesting way to prove that. So obviously I win the pawn. So now it's 2 pawns for the piece. King f6, rook takes c6, b takes c6, and now knight c7. And I'm winning the a pawn too. So now it's going to be 1 pawn for the piece. But it's more than that. Rook g8 was played because rook e6 was threatened. So if they go like rook f8, I don't care about the a pawn because they have moves like this. Rook a8, which just complicates things. Obviously I'm fine after bishop d3, and then if knight c5 I can take and play a6. But here, if they play rook f8, just as an example, rook e6 check just picks up the g6 pawn, which is very surprising to look at. But yeah, it just works out in my favor. And actually, if they go back, I actually just win the knight too. So they have to go like king f7, bishop takes g6, and then they have to allow bishop takes h5 here, which then allows a rook takes e7 check, winning the knight. It's over, right? So that's why they played rook g8. Very obvious move, just defending a pawn. I played rook e6 check, king f7, and now this long maneuver comes into full effect. So sure, I could play a move like, I don't know, bishop d3, or even like move my rook back. But there's actually a really strong move here, which I was pretty proud to find in the game. It's bishop a2, of course. I mentioned the maneuver. It's the maneuver. So my bishop maneuvers all the way here and is the star of the game, because now I have a lot of threats. So they played king f8 here, and I took on a6 because now they can't play rook a8. They played king e8, and now I took on e7. So if they played well, anything else here, then I just take on e7. Like the only other move here to consider is something like king g7, where I just play rook e7 and win the knight. And if something like rook c8, then rook takes d6, just wins the game, because now I'm going to take on d7. The discovery is more important than anything else, so of course this wins. And that was all something I saw. Not too crazy though. We saw king f8, and yeah, I actually was considering rook takes d6 as well. I just thought that it was cleaner just to take the a pawn, because right now I'm just threatening to go back and then just play a6, a7, a8. King e8, rook takes e7, bishop takes g8, king d8 now, bishop f7, knight f8, f5. The whole point is, if I can just win this pawn, and I have 2 rook pawns against the knight, that's just lost. And it's very clear that it's lost as well. And that's just what happens to the game. They take, because otherwise I'm just going to take and play g7, and that's just going to win on the spot. But I take h5, and because of that, again, 2 rook pawns, just completely winning. Bishop f7, because after king b7, I want to be able to play bishop c4 to hold on to the pawn. Because if I do something else, like let's just say king f2, maybe they can play something like this, followed by like c5, try to get the pawn. Where, yeah, it's probably winning, but try to get good technique, right? You want your opponent to resign as fast as possible, and you want to play as accurately as possible so you don't mess it up. So that's one thing that I was trying to work on, is trying not to mess up winning positions anymore. Okay, so they played d5 here. I played knight c5 check first, king a7, bishop d3, attacking the f5 pawn, knight g6, and I just completely ignored the f5 pawn, h5. h4 was hanging, and I thought that was more important. The rook pawn, more important than the bishop pawn here. They played knight h4, and I played king f2, and my opponent resigned. The knight is actually just trapped, so if they play a move like king b8 or a8, just king g3, just wins the knight, and it doesn't matter if they take here because the h pawn will run. I have 2 rook pawns, and 2 minor pieces, as well as this pawn. So even that pawn, if that pawn wasn't there, I can still win with the pawns, the h or the a pawn. And obviously, if they play f4 instead of king a7, then I can just play h6 here. It doesn't even matter that the knight is stuck, I can just leave it there and just promote. So that's always nice as well. And that's why, of course, after king f2, my opponent resigned. So that was pretty nice. My opponent was, again, over 2,000 FIDE, but had like a 1,700 national ranking, which is insane. That's actually very common, it seems, in Canada. Unfortunately, a lot of people just have really low FIDE ratings, even though they play much stronger than their FIDE entails. So that's an interesting challenge if one is trying to get like a FIDE title in Canada. I think it might just be almost impossible, it feels like. But that is it for this game number 2 of my return tournament. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I think it was really interesting, the whole Maroxy bind and then the sacrifice on c4, how it didn't pan out, and most importantly, this kind of funny maneuver of this, which again, I don't recommend. If you need to move your rook, just play rook b1. Be a normal human being. Don't be like me. It could have gone horribly wrong for me. I got lucky. So we'll just end it at that. But thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next game. Have a good one. Bye-bye.